Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I have been asked for a long time to update the CTP guide. And now the CTP guide is an interesting piece of information and sort of guide because it's complicated. And I always have to ask this question whenever I get the question, whenever I'm asked, you know, hey Cynicalex, hey Alex, I have this character or I have that character, I just got this new uniform, I just unlocked that tier 3, what CTP should I give them? And I always have to have this conversation where I say, hey, you know, first of all, of course, it's just my opinion, but you know, hey, what do you want the character to do? You just got Hulk to tier 3, cool, but what were you hoping to do with Hulk tier 3? Were you hoping to take him into timeline battle? He's banned right now in Vibranium, but were you hoping to play him in PvP, maybe Alliance Conquest? Were you hoping to play him in World Boss, maybe Squad Battle, maybe ABX? You know, what exactly were you trying to get out of the character? And not just insofar as, you know, oh, all of the pros are using this or that, right? Because a pro player might say, or, you know, of a high-level veteran might say, you know, Hulk is not that good for ABX, so I'm not going to give him a Rage. But who knows? Maybe you want to give him a Rage because you want to do stage 30-40 Proxima without having to worry about him dying. You know, you don't have the fastest reflexes, you're not the best player, and he's going to get you 600k for the combat villain ABX because you don't have Namor because he's premium, and you don't want to build up Apocalypse because he's way too expensive and you haven't unlocked his world boss stage yet. So there's all these different questions that you need to ask yourself. That's why I've hesitated for so long to make a CTP guide, because you the player, need to go through and have this conversation with yourself and sort of ask yourself this question. I can just say, you know, yeah, I think the best CTP for Hulk is Regen, and I think the second best CTP for Hulk is Rage. But that is just the answer. That doesn't actually answer, or that doesn't actually trigger the questions, and you might still be wondering, well, why does Alex think Regen is the best? And why does he think Rage is second best? So I'll try to answer that question now. The reason why I do the suggestions in the way that I do them is I try to answer basically two main questions. One, is the character going to be able to do more game modes with this particular CTP? If a character can do more game modes with one particular CTP without losing a lot of value in other areas, then I'll probably recommend that CTP first. On the other hand, if they can only really do, you know, if like Wolverine, he's a very good example. If you give him a Rage, he can do a decent job in World Boss, but then he can't do PvP at all. And on the flip side, if you give him a Regen, he'll do PvP really well for you, and he's not really going to do anything else. So that's a case where it's very cut and dry, it's very black and white. But for other characters, it's not so black and white. You have a character like Jean Grey. She's really good with a CTP of Greed for PvP. She's really good with a Rage, but she can still do PvP with a Rage, so I'm probably going to end up recommending a Rage over a Greed. When I recommend a Rage over a Greed, am I recommending that you use Jean Grey for PvE content? You try to push in World Boss? Not necessarily. Jean is good for World Boss, but there are a lot of other characters that are much cheaper, that are much better than Jean, like Psylocke, or maybe even Blue Dragon for Ebony Maw. So there's all these questions and there's these answers that you have to sort of go through. But that's the first thing that I think about, is whether the character can do multiple things with that one CTP and whether they can be flexible or not. And then I think about what that character is best at. So although I recommend Greed for Jean Grey because it's a flexible obelisk, it's a flexible CTP, and she could do PvP, Jean Grey, in my opinion, is much better. You know, maybe she's like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 for PvE content, World Boss, Shadowland, stuff like that. But for PvP, Timeline Battle, Alliance Conquest, she's number 1. She's 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10. So because she leans quite heavily to PvP, I'm more inclined to give her a Greed first, or recommend the Greed first. So even though that first thing I said about Rage is true, I end up going with Greed as the first option because she's just so dominant in PvP. So let's take a look at the list now, and I'll sort of re-explain what I just said by looking at it. So this is actually, I didn't make a new tab for this, so I'm trying to sort of clean up and condense the guide. This is the champ building guide, or sort of tab at the bottom. You have tier list, and then you have the tier 3 guide, and then you have the progression guide, and then you have champ building. I may or may not get rid of the CTP and obelisk guide that was here from before. It's going to differ from what you see here, but this is basically going to just take every single character, and I'm going to try and give you two options. So we're going to scroll over here now, so it's even easier for you to see, and I really like this part of the design of this guide because you can scroll and do that, and then you can see very quickly, okay, Captain America, Rage, Destruction. So basically, what I'm trying to say with best CTP and second best CTP is I'm sort of trying to answer two questions simultaneously. I'm trying to, again, this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. You can do your own thing. You can build your characters your own way. And to be honest, there are some characters that have a third or a fourth best CTP. There's just not enough space to do all of that. So if you want more in-depth information about a character, I would recommend asking a content creator, looking up a content creator's videos, not necessarily mine, they can be someone else's, and sort of doing it that way. But I tried my best, and I think 2 is a reasonable amount of information. So what I'm trying to do with the best CTP, I'm not only recommending the best CTP in my opinion, but I'm also trying to recommend what I think is the best sort of build for the character. Not the best build that's going to be singularly good for the character, but the best build overall for your account. So a good example would be Colossus. Colossus is a decent, above average, I would say. He's actually a pretty good standalone character. You can build him with a Rage, and he can do stage 50, 60 Proxima. He's not bad at all. He hits pretty hard, and you can build him with a Regen, and he's actually quite good for PvP. But the thing is, he's used a lot in PvP as a support, and he's just there for his passive, and 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, he's on a team with Colossus, or Colossus is on a team with Colossus. Brother. Anyways, he's on a team with Thanos, Jean Grey, Silver Surfer, and those are the heavyweights that just take advantage of his passive and win. And you never even play, you never end up even playing as Colossus. So that's why I say Insight is my top choice, because he's a support character, so increase his support capabilities by giving him the best support CTP in the game. And in this case, I do talk the talk and walk the walk, because I do rock a CTP of Insight on my Colossus. Now, if you want the #1 Colossus, or like I said, you want to use Colossus in PvE, use Colossus in PvP, then Insight is not the best option. No, it's probably Rage or Regen, but that's the case. So that's sort of what I'm trying to say here with the first option. And then for the second option, I am just basically saying, okay, if you're going to steer the character in one direction, where are they best? So if you don't like the initial option, or you're not really interested, you're a PvP player, you're like, okay, I don't really play much World Boss, I'm really interested in Timeline Battle and Conquest. Captain America Rage, no? Okay, let's go with Destruction. Why do we give Captain America Destruction? You could also argue a Regen is really good. Destruction's great because he doesn't have any penetration. He lacks penetration on his skills, giggity, besides his ultimate. Yeah, his ultimate does have penetration. Let me just double check. But because of that, you can give him the penetration. Yeah, he does. So you can give him the penetration on Destruction, which will make him a threat, and he already has a very large HP pool. But I am recommending Captain America for PvE generally. So what I'm essentially saying here is that I believe that Captain America is better off, in the current meta, he is better off being used for PvE content, squad battle, ABX, world boss, etc., Shadowland. He's better off being used there than being used for PvP. He can work in PvP, I just think he's better off in other places. There are some characters that are like 55-45, so I'm kind of like leaning 55% towards PvE for Apocalypse and 45% towards PvP. Apocalypse is a very good PvP character, but I have to make a decision, so that's what I'm going with. For some characters, it's much more like there's a much larger gap, but again, that's something that you have to come to a decision to, and that you have to do a bit more research on. I don't have Gladiator, but all the people I talked to, like All Might and all those other guys there, they recommended either Rage or Greed, right? Greed would be for PvP, Rage would be for PvE. But as we've seen, the meta around Gladiator hasn't really, materialized or grown. He doesn't seem to be good enough to stick around. So that means, in my opinion, what I think is that he's more suited at this point, better suited to be built for PvE content. So you can actually even use this CTP list just as a general rule of thumb, if you trust my opinion, on whether you should build this character primarily for PvE or for PvP. Now, keep in mind that generally I am a PvE player. That may be changing in the future if Timeline Battle and Alliance Conquest get big enough reworks, because I personally love PvP in any kind of game. It's just that Marvel Future Fight has had such a mediocre PvP scene for so long, and they've just done so little for PvP players. Bad rewards, bad gameplay, stale content that hasn't been updated in years. They just peeled the beta tag off of Conquest and said, hey guys, it's somehow new, and it actually hadn't been changed. So yeah, I haven't really dived too deep into the PvP scene in Marvel Future Fight, but I try to keep up with Timeline Battle, and I try to play Timeline Battle semi-competitively. So yeah, there is a leaning in my list. There is definitely a leaning towards PvE, but I tried to balance that with PvP. I think Hulk is a really good example. I got some insight. See what I did there? I got some insight from some Alliance Conquest players regarding the Warriors of the Sky. So shout out to them. They know who they are. about you know, what builds to do on those characters there. So there is some balance, but for the most part, yeah, it's you can see it's a big rage fest, and it's no surprise there that rage is pretty much the #1 PvE obelisk or CTP for all content that's PvE related. And then the good thing is that rage can double as a good enough obelisk or a good enough CTP for really powerful PvE characters who want to do a little bit of PvP, like Silver Surfer and Jean Grey, because of the fact that you're still going to get 75% dodge. So the dodge actually hurts Silver Surfer because of his counterattack, but on the other hand, because he doesn't have super armor, he's going to get guard broken with every single attack. So being able to dodge and get out of that guard break animation that he's constantly rocking his head back is actually really key and really important. So we have all of the CTPs here. I haven't gone through, you'll see, like, there are obviously gaps in the information, so I haven't gone through and added Transcendence and Patience that I suggested on all of these characters here. I will go ahead and do that in the future, but for now, I just went through myself through this list and I added all of the characters that I think are sort of closest to the meta. So I tried to I tried to tag all. This is the tier 3 guide. We want the we want the meta tier list. I wanted to at least cover all of the characters in the Omega, Mythic, and Legendary tier, and I think most of the characters as well in the Heroic tier. But we'll get over to the Rare, Advanced, Normal, and Toilet tier in the future. But in the meantime, what I want to know is if you guys like this or not. If you guys like this way of explaining things, and if you think this is sufficient amount of information coupled with this video to explain my thought process. I can't really explain my thought process here in the sort of the side of the guide. I mean, I could. Maybe I'll write a little blurb here reminding people what this means by #1 and #2. But yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the new character building CTP guide. Again, it's in the regular master guides that we've been using for years now. So it's always down below in the description of every single video. And all you have to do is you go over here, you click File, and then you click Make a Copy, or you click Download, and you can download it yourself. You're not going to get all of the updates. If I make updates in the future, you'll have to download or make a new copy, but you will have a copy that is as current, as recent as when I last edited it whenever you click it. And then from there, you can edit your own, but you cannot edit my copy, because then people could just go in here and write whatever they want, and then they would just ruin the list and confuse it or delete it or whatever, and that would be kind of a drag. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have suggestions for CTPs on these characters, hit me up, Twitter, Discord, etc. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.